NALS Conference 2013. I'm joined by Christopher Hamer, the Property Ombudsman. Welcome, Christopher. Now, you're a regular here at the NALS Conference.
Yes,
is it increasingly an important event on the private rented sector calendar?
Given that there is so much happening now in the private rented sector, we've heard this morning about all the different bits of legislation that are coming through, which may drift us towards regulation. Yes, it's very important that meetings such as this bring together agents and other people who are stakeholders in the property sector to understand what's coming down the line, what commitments and liabilities they're going to be taking on.
And that was very much the focus of your presentation, and it was great to see you on stage with the other ombudsman really united to talk about compliance.
Yes, and we wanted to do that because although we were unrehearsed, hopefully it came over as informative and educational, but we wanted to do that because the important thing is to reduce consumer dissatisfaction, and by giving out the message that what causes problems, how we deal with them, how agents should deal with complaints when they receive them, stops them escalating. I know it sounds like we're trying to work ourselves out of business, but really the right way is for the complaint not to arise in the first place or to stop it escalating so that our involvement is unnecessary.
And one thing you did touch on was that if somebody has a complaint and it is dealt with in a professional manner, that can actually increase the consumer's loyalty to that agent.
I think so. There will always be things that go wrong in whatever transaction you're undertaking, and it's how it's dealt with. If the complainant feels as though the agent has taken the matter seriously, has perhaps offered some form of redress themselves, then that's clearly going to be a very positive factor in deciding whether to use that agent again in the future.
Absolutely. So what would you say are the key things that agents should be aware of coming down the line?
All the legislation that we've talked about this morning, the requirement to join up with an approved redress scheme early next year, but particularly the consumer protection for unfair trading regulations. Now, there is a voice that says that these don't apply to the letting sector. They do. They're important. They're very difficult to apply. It's a piece of legislation which has come out of a European directive which relates to all forms of products and services. So if you're buying a washing machine, they're probably very apt. But in the property sector, with the peculiarities of the property sector, it's very difficult for an agent to understand what they need to describe at any particular point. But the key is they need to disclose, the agent needs to disclose at the earliest opportunity what they know about the property, what they should have known about the property, and what they become aware of throughout the transaction. What they're trying to do is to equip the prospective tenant or indeed the landlord about the services the agent offers to make an informed transactional decision.
Indeed. And so come next year when the registration with an ombudsman scheme becomes mandatory, you're going to be even busier.
Well, possibly so, and that's a valid remark to make because 35% of the letting agents operating in the UK are not affiliated to bodies such as NALS or ALA or to the Property Ombudsman scheme. They're operating currently according to their own set of standards. Well, if they're required to join a redress scheme early next year, I suspect that their workload will be disproportionate to those that are already within the regulated or within the controlled environment, let's call it.
I was going to say actually that the people that have voluntarily signed up with a scheme such as yours, they can actually say, well, we've already voluntarily done that before it became mandatory, and that's actually a very positive point about how they've raised their own standards.
It is. It's important to get that message over. Those agents that have been operating according to my code of practice over a number of years, you can see the improvement. They understand what they've got to do. And the majority of complaints I get are not about malicious intent or fraudulent activity. They're about brain out of gear, lack of communication, failing to understand or failing to get the complainant or the prospective tenant or landlord to understand what commitments they're taking on.
Well, thank you very much for joining us here at the NALS conference. We really appreciate your support.
Thanks very much.